All right, we have an update into the long negotiations going on about the border agreement in the Senate. So finally, the Senate border bill that has been worked on by Republican Senator Lankford from Oklahoma, Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, and Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, Independent. They have been putting together this border deal for months now, and we're going to add it to the military supplement, defense industry supplement, that was to protect Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And they're going to add this in so that we have domestic security and international security all in one package. That was the plan. It was actually a package that Republicans originally pushed for, was tying the international aid to the domestic security, because they were saying, why spend so much international security and not spend any on our national security?
Yeah, and so the Democrats were coming around and giving them exactly what they were asking
And
for.
let's go into what were the things that are in this bill. So the first thing is that they're going to speed up the asylum process. So right now, the asylum process is like a 10-year waiting period. This means people who claim asylum then sit in the United States waiting for their court hearing for like 10 years, right? These people who are just asylum pending. Then they're going to cut that 10 years down to 6 months so that we can cycle through these people way faster, decide whether or not they have the legal right to stay. And we're like funding that process. Right now, we don't have enough judges. We don't have the systems in place. And this will create those systems to move these claims more rapidly. Yeah,
Definitely.
Now, they also, with these asylum seekers, they want to give them work permits way faster. So this way, asylum seekers won't be as much of a burden on local and municipal governments. And they'll be able to work for themselves, be able to pay their own rents and be able to buy their own food. They won't be reliant on state and federal aid.
Which I feel like this is a good opportunity for us to jump in really quick and kind of push back on the premise that we need such strict immigration control, because we've talked about this before at length, but immigration is a good thing. It's a good thing for the economy. Immigrants do not outcompete native-born American workers. They actually just create a larger workforce of people who are generally willing to do the jobs that most native-born Americans don't want to do.
They actually create more and better jobs for native-born workers. Immigrants create better jobs for native-born workers, because native-born workers are the ones that are going to be moving up into lower and middle management faster.
Exactly.
Because there are more foreign-born workers entering the labor market who are going to be taking the jobs below them.
Yes. So the whole structure of this bill and of the entire immigration debate that has been happening for the past several months at the federal level of the U.S. government is that immigration is bad and it needs to be stopped. That is a false premise.
Yes.
There's very little to no evidence to support that. We did a deep dive on this. We looked into it in
Our best one.
great depth.
It's probably our best one.
Definitely our best one. Really, but we've completely lost the plot.
Democrats have totally lost the narrative.
Advocates of immigration. I mean, it's not just Democrats, because I think this is a great opportunity. We want to give credit where credit is due to libertarians.
Sure,
We're
yeah,
also
true.
huge advocates of basically open borders, more freedom of immigration. But the media has completely spun this issue so that it is not aligned with what the evidence says at all. And people think immigration is the biggest problem this country has. Funnily enough, some Republicans were sent to the border for like not a convoy, that's not the right word, but an event to like
the truckers to help stop the migrant wave. I saw that.
Yeah,
right?
an
Like they
event-
all drove down there in support of closing the border.
and then they get down there and they see there's no problem. Like there's nobody streaming across the border. People are calling it a massive grift. One, because they're getting there and they're like, okay, this isn't a problem. So we've been completely duped by the media that has been blowing this up as the biggest crisis in our country. And because literally there are vendors down there like selling T-shirts to celebrate the idea.
That is so gross.
Isn't that ridiculous?
If you're making money off like just like watching people who are struggling and suffering crossing over a dangerous river to get in the country,
Yeah.
and you're selling a T-shirt, like, are you kidding me?
It's absurd. But we even went to, even knowing this, even being as pro-immigration as we were, we came to the conclusion like we have lost the plot so much that we are willing to pass a piece of legislation that clamps down on the border more so that we can recapture some of the conversation and redirect it towards something that is more amenable to better legal immigration as a system.
Yes.
And even as we try to do that, we're getting pushback, but we'll get to that.
Yes. So now That's the first thing, right?
Yes.
Speed up those asylum claims. Then the government is going to pay for lawyers to help with unaccompanied minors. There's a large portion of the people who come across the border who are unaccompanied minors, like 13 or lower. Okay? These people, when they're 13 or lower, they get a free lawyer from the government. Josh Hawley comes out and he says, this bill pays for lawyers for illegal aliens. If they're under 13, Josh Hawley, what, do you want this child to testify before the court and be his own defense?
Yeah.
What are we talking about here, man? But then this is when it gets almost too radical for me. This is when it gets like too much for me, right?
Yeah.
This is when it starts getting pushed back from my perspective on the more progressive side. It's that when 5,000 people are found to have crossed in one day, the president will be required to funnel asylum claims to the port of entry. This can only be used a limited number of times per the year, and it sunsets in 3 years. But what this is saying is, if there's 5,000 encounters in one day, the president's going to have some pretty strict authority to funnel immigrants towards ports of entry.
Yes.
Right?
I see.
That's a lot of power to give the executive branch over this.
Yeah. And,
you know?
And if you are doing that, you have to start to think of the other repercussions of what is going to be happening at those ports of entry. Like what's going to be happening to the trade routes that we currently have with Mexico, who is our biggest trade partner.
I mean, like the answer to your question is you make more points of entry. Right? That's got to be the point. Like the answer has to be you build more points of entry.
And if you don't, you're just hurting our economy even more.
Yeah. But that's an issue for me, right? Because then it's like 5,000 people found crossing in a day. We're already at those numbers. So that we would already be doing this.
Yeah.
Funneling people towards the ports of entry. That's fine. I hope everybody comes to the ports of entry. I want it to be easy, okay? I want there to be a simple app on the phone where they can apply, get in, do their thing, get vetted, make sure that they're clean. When I say clean, I don't mean dirty. I mean like with health-wise and everything. And then they come into the country and all good to go. 5,000, probably too low a number for me. But that's fine. I'm compromising here, all right? Then more visas. This one I really like. There will be 50,000 extra employment and family reunification visas each year for the next 5 years. That's really good. Our current diversity lottery visa is 55,000. So the current only way to get a long-term visa in the United States that isn't H-1B or H-1A is through the diversity lottery. This is the only way a non-skilled laborer could get in the United States. It's like a 1 out of 400 or 500 something shot of getting selected. Now we're increasing those numbers. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Path to citizenship for Afghan parolees and children of H-1B holders. That's huge.
Yep.
Normally, these H-1B holders, so H-1B holders, these are people who come in for work permits, okay? I think in the agricultural sector or more professional industries. No, H-1A is for agriculture. H-1B is for the more skilled industries. Okay. Currently, kids of H-1B visa holders get deported when they become 21.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a huge shift. That's a great change.
Okay.
All right. And then the last one, it also includes $20 billion of enhanced border enforcement on the U.S.-Mexico border to combat drug trafficking specifically, right? So like really high-tech fentanyl detection screenings and stuff like that.
Yeah, which I might be against, but
I know. So this bill has earned. Wait, we want someone?
Well, I was just gonna say, because I feel like that's kind of that should go explained. Just because I don't think the enhanced enforcement mechanisms will actually be effective in preventing fentanyl from coming in. Just for the sake of the audience.
I also don't think it will either.
Yeah.
I mean, like this is almost like kind of red meat to try. I feel like this is red meat to get the Republicans on board. But I could totally be under the circumstances that no, the Border Patrol needs more resources. I can maybe subscribe to that belief.
Sure. I mean, I agree. I think it's mostly political.
Yeah, I agree with you too. But the Border Patrol doesn't agree that it's just political. The Border Patrol Union has actually endorsed the plan.
Yep.
So the Border Patrol Union is all on board. So what's the issue here, Ben? Well, the Republicans have now totally rejected their own deal. Okay? Republicans have come out and they said, we're not voting for it. Mike Johnson said this thing is dead on arrival in the House. Yeah. We have Senator Lankford, the guy who wrote the bill, won't even vote for the procedural mechanisms to get the debate started.
It's insane.
The Oklahoma Republican Party, this is where Senator Lankford is from, has voted to condemn Senator Lankford for working with Democrats in negotiating this package.
Absolutely insane.
The party of Oklahoma, the Republican Party, this isn't like some fringe, crazy MAGA Republicans. No. It's the party of a state has said, Senator Lankford, we're condemning you for working across the aisle. We condemn you for being bipartisan. We condemn you for working with the enemy.
God, this just screams fealty to Trump to me.
Yes.
Right? Like Trump has said that he does not want the border deal to be passed under the pretense that it's not enough, but with the obvious reasoning that it's going to look good for Biden during a re-election year.
Well, there's already been Republicans, and we've talked about them. Republicans have come out. They're like, why would we do anything that could help with Joe Biden's sinking approval ratings?
Yeah.
Whoa. Is that what you're using to make calculations about how we're doing government right now? That's what we're talking about? That's what you want to go with? What about all the times what if Democrats sank the CARES Act in March of 2020 and provided no relief because it would have made the economy better and would have helped Trump?
Yeah.
Right? Would Democrats do that in the face of a crisis? No. So it means one of two things, Republicans. Either the border isn't a crisis or you just don't care about the issue at all. It has to be one or the other.
And the important takeaway when we're thinking about voting, right? As people who get somewhat of a say on this, when we're voting this November for the House of Representatives, right? We need to keep in mind how dysfunctional this Republican Party is, how they are actively preventing us from making progress. Again, I don't necessarily think that restricting immigration more is a version of progress, but it seems like the majority do. So if you're one of those people, note that it is the Republican Party that is preventing that progress.
Yes.
Okay? There's a clear option on the table here that Democrats have negotiated with Republicans. They've said that they will pass. And now the Republicans like Mike Johnson in the House are only willing to pass a bill that they push so far that they need to hear from Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, that he won't support it before they say that they're okay with the bill. So they're just saying they're not okay with any bill that will pass.
Yes, that's exactly what they're saying. And when you talk about the fealty to Trump, it's obvious now.
So obvious.
Jim Jordan went on Fox News. Jim Jordan is one of the leading Republicans. He's from Ohio, okay? He was on Fox News last night, and he said that there was no reason to pass a bill now. That's what he said. There was no reason to pass a bill. And if people want change, they should go out and vote for Donald Trump in the next election. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's crazy because I want to map that out, right? There's no reason to make the change now. If people want change, they have to go vote for Trump. So it's like he's literally saying, oh yeah, we could make change, but it's not worth it. It's only worth it if change is made via Trump.
Right.
So like, how do you reconcile? How could that possibly make sense? It's just they are so caught up in the battle of winning and losing, of the politicking of all of it, and you just see that Democrats are willing to do the thing that actually makes progress, and some Republicans are on board, and they're exasperated with the fact that so many members of their party are falling into this partisan bickering.
Yeah, I mean they're in like this quicksand where they don't know what they can't get out.
Yeah,
they cannot get out. We have senators. Okay, Senator Barrasso, he's the third most powerful Republican senator in the Senate. Okay, he says I cannot vote for this bill. Americans will turn to the upcoming election to end the border crisis. This election is 272 days away. Senator, if it's a crisis, how can we let it go on for 272 days to wait for it to end?
Yeah.
If it's a crisis, how are you going to wait for 272 days when you could do something, but instead you're doing nothing? You're not going to take action for a full year on a crisis because you want your guy to win, and you think the country being in a crisis, I don't even agree it's a crisis, but it's their word.
Yeah.
They are comfortable putting the country in a crisis to get their guy elected. That's what they think.
For nearly a year. It just, to me, and I don't like making extreme like statements on the show because I think generally extremity is incorrect. It just doesn't match up with the facts. But the facts that we're seeing, the literal quotes that we're getting from the Republican congressmen is they can't govern. They can't get things done. They aren't willing to actually fix the problems that they identify in the country if it isn't on their own political terms. If that's not a reason to not vote Republican, I don't know what could be.
Right, they're not reliable actors.
No.
It blows my mind. And also Jim Jordan is wrong, okay? Because this bill would not pass under a Donald Trump administration. Because good luck trying to get 10 Democrats to vote for a Republican drafted border bill. Good luck trying to get to that happen.
Ooh, well, if that's the case,
Well, no, but it's a if the Republicans go hard and push for something even more extreme than this,
yes,
Democrats are not going to vote for it.
Well, here's the interesting question. Here's where our argument would fall apart, depending on the answer you give me.
Yeah.
If Republicans brought this very same bill, would Democrats pass it?
I can guarantee you there are 10 Democrats in the House right now that would sign this bill.
I think so too.
Absolutely.
So.
I'm looking at Mark Warner. I'm looking at Kirsten Sinema. I'm looking at Joe Manchin. There are Chris Coons from Delaware. There are plenty of Democrats that I could point to. That
would they and would they do it in an election year? Because we have to compare apples to apples.
Well, if I'm looking at something that the Democrats think is a crisis, okay, I look at the CARES Act in March 2020.
Yep.
That was in an election year, and it propped up and saved the American economy.
Totally.
So yeah.
So either this is a crisis, and we see that there is a substantive difference between the parties and how they govern.
Yes.
Or they're lying about whether it's a crisis.
Or it's not even a crisis.
Yeah.
It's not a crisis, and they're trying to get you scared on purpose because there's too many brown people, and they don't want their country to be dirty, and it's poisoning the blood of our country.
They need a scapegoat to prop themselves up.
It's ridiculous, but even McConnell has come out against it now. So there we go. Now McConnell's going against it.
Yeah.
So it's totally dead. All of those months, and it just blows my mind because when we look back on this, Obama was trying to do immigration reform in 2013. That was very similar to the immigration reform that Ronald Reagan did back in the 80s. He gave amnesty for people that were currently in the country and then reinforced the border more strictly, okay? Well, Obama proposed doing a similar thing to Reagan and had the support of Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. Senator Marco Rubio first came into the Senate in 2012. That was his freshman term in the Senate. And he came in all bright-eyed, happy to work with Democrats. It was called the Gang of Eight was making this immigration deal. Sean Hannity actually comes out for 3 days after Marco Rubio's speech. Sean Hannity on Fox News is touting this deal. He loves this deal. He's in favor of this deal. Day 4, day 5, it's over. Day 7, Marco Rubio comes out against the bill, writes an op-ed in the Washington Post against the bill he helped write.
Wow.
So this isn't a new story. Okay, Democrats, you got played. Senator Schultz, I think Shirts, whatever, it's the senator from Hawaii, okay? He came out, he was talking online and he was saying, Republicans, can't believe they would do this to us. I believe it. Are you living under a rock? They did it to you 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Why would you be surprised they did it to you now? They've already done this to you. You're getting played again. So it is what it is.
I hope that people see this story for what it is. To me, this is one of those things which, like, because I think I'm usually prevented from, like, having super strong opinions on either side because there's always a reasonable argument on the other side. But this is so clear as far as how it's playing out, as far as the politicking of it all and how they're preventing progress just for the sake of trying to elect their guy. It boggles the mind.
No, it's just disgusting. So now this brings in the new angle, right? So this was supposed to be a border and international security deal, a national security and an international security deal. Well, we still have to pass some international aid here. Israel's at war, whether you agree or not. Unfortunately, the Congress is in full support of Israel, which I do not agree with. Then we have the war in Ukraine, and we have China's possible invasion of Taiwan. All these three nations, maybe not, well, Israel doesn't, but those two nations need weapons to continue their war. So Mike Johnson is pushing a non-tied package, okay, a separate Israel aid package that is separate from Ukraine, separate from Taiwan. And this is because the Republican base, for some reason, turned against Ukraine, which I almost don't even know when that happened, and then don't support Taiwan for another reason that I honestly don't even know why they don't support Taiwan. But
I think it's America first taking over.
But then why give money to Israel if you're America first? I don't get it.
Israel aligns with the evangelical
ideals.
It does. Whereas the others don't.
That makes sense. That can make sense.